Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we'll be taking a look at Sahara's ultimate water cooling solution for your PC. This is the EX360. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so in today's video we'll be taking a look at the Sahara Gaming EX360. This is a 360mm AIO custom water cooling system for your PC, which has a ton of features. Basically, it's a 360mm radiator, as you'd expect. It's got addressable RGB lighting. It's also got a really interesting design for the actual pump head itself, which you can see just here. And there is also a LCD display on the pump head, which gives you a surface temperature reading of your CPU. So don't be confused, it isn't the actual CPU temperature, it is the actual surface temperature of your CPU. Kind of like realistically what the water temperature is like, so not only can you have your statistics from your PC in things like hardware monitor for your overall system temps, VRMs, etc, but something else which is actually quite important is the overall temperature of the CPU surface and also the water passing through your system. So we're going to go through, do an unboxing, going to put it in my PC. So my PC is running a Ryzen 9 3900X, currently being cooled by the lovely Noctua D15 cooler. So let's see if we can drop it down a few degrees with this all-in-one beauty. So let's take a quick look at the packaging first of all. So as you can see, this is the EX360 from Sahara Gaming. Liquid cooler, RGB support, and it supports addressable RGB in the form of things like the MSI Mystic Sync, Asus Aurora, that kind of thing. So there is a 3-pin 5V addressable RGB header which can be connected to your motherboard. But if you don't have that, this does come included with Sahara's very own RGB controller and fan hub. So you can take control of the lighting with their handy remote control, as is very common on a lot of other Sahara Gaming products. On the top of the box, their slightly unusual slogan, make of that what you will. And on the back of the box, we've got some specifications, talks about all the details, but we'll take a closer look at those when we go over to the website, which we'll do right now. So this is the Sahara Gaming website, so you go to saharagaming.com.tw, and we're going to head over to the store and we'll go to CPU Cooler. So in the CPU Cooler, they've got another cooler which you may be interested in. This is the Iced Rainbow, but we're going to be concentrating on this one. So this is the Sahara Gaming EX360 Universal AIO with ARGB fan. Got the information there, so you've got they've missed out the 1200, that also is compatible. And also on here we've got AM4, AM3, etc. So it pretty much covers most of the bases. You've got a wireless RF remote, as we said, and it detects the surface temperature of the CPU, as you can see here in this display. Got the price there, which is £129.99 currently here in the United Kingdom, and with shipping with Parcel Force next day, an additional £5.99. And there may well be discount codes actually in the video description to give a little bit of something back to you Mike's Unboxing viewers, so do look out in the video description for that, and you should be able to save a little bit of money on that price. Essentially the price of that at the moment is kind of in the lower mid-range of addressable RGB 360mm AIO coolers, so not a particularly cheap price, but certainly there are some excellent components in there which do make up for it. So let's take a look at some of the pictures we've got here. So that is a back view of the fans themselves, with the addressable RGB, etc, as you'd expect. And we've got the actual pump head itself there. And this is the bit which is a little bit scary. So this is all the fitting kit. So you've got washer kits, radiator screw kits, black paint screw nut kits, Intel and AMD brackets. You've got the remote control there and the hub, the 3 fans, etc, gaskets, and all that kind of stuff. Another picture of the back of the box. You get the general idea. So aluminium radiator and engineering plastic for pretty much everything else. So that's pretty much it for the website. Again, stock unit, etc. And here we have the description and the dimensions. So if you want to quickly pause on that, you're more than welcome to. But we've got pretty much everything we need there. So ceramic bearings in the pumps. You've got pure aluminium radiator, which is done in black. You've got the dimensions, etc. Fan speeds for the fans. So they spin between 700 and 2000 RPM, plus or minus 10%. Pretty decent airflow ratings there across the range, and decent air pressure. Noise level is also very good. And you've got an FTP bearing type in there, and as it goes for the sockets there, a little bit more up to date, so it's got the LGA 1200, so if you want to use it on a new Intel system you can do, 11th gen, that sort of stuff, and also obviously all the AM4s, and going all the way back to FM1 and AM2 should you wish to. Okay, so let's take a look and see what we actually get in the box. So I've actually had this out already and I have given it some testing in my system. Actually, the one behind me, which is the streaming system, which is only a Ryzen 5 3600, but I thought that would be a great way just to test this out and see how easy it is to fit and basically if it works okay, all that kind of stuff. And actually passed with flying colours, which is why I'm now going to put it into my main editing rig. So what do we get in the box? We get a instruction manual, and to be honest with you, you possibly will need this. There are a lot of screws and bits and pieces, lots of cabling, all those kinds of things, but it's all laid out here. And actually pretty decent instructions, very easy to follow, so that is really good. We also get the Sahara Gaming, the Pirate controller, so this is their remote control, and it's actually got the updated PWM controller built into their hub here. So we'll take a quick look at this. So the actual design of it looks almost identical to the previous versions. There are some very, very slight differences, but what I have found with this is other Sahara Gaming controllers, the older versions of this, the PWM wasn't particularly good, didn't always pick up the RPMs, the fans, etc. It was a little bit difficult to control on some systems, but I've actually found this to be absolutely brilliant. So you can actually add up to 10 fans onto this particular device, and also there's connections for synchronization to motherboard, etc, etc. You can take manual control, so you've got the LED speed, the modes, and the fan speed, etc. But realistically, you're never going to need that because you can use the included remote control should you wish to, or obviously you can just use the pass-through feature and use the controls from your motherboard. So that's both PWM and addressable RGB. Whichever way you choose to do it, it's absolutely fine. You have got all the connections on there to do it. So yeah, if you've got a system which has got addressable RGB and you want to use that, absolutely no problem at all. If you don't have that, then you can go ahead and use their own system. The choice is entirely yours. The fan connections on this are Sahara's proprietary ones. So you will need to populate additional fans from Sahara if you want to add to this particular system, but it's pretty much mix and match, so you can have this as a standalone and use other fans from maybe Corsair or whoever you choose. But maybe if you've got some of the Typhoon 14s, they will be absolutely fine with this. Most of the Pirate range of fans, the Pirate Duo, etc, etc, they can all be plugged into here on this connection, so that's absolutely fine. So you can, if you want to, really use this as a real kind of mix and match setup. The fans themselves, actually included in the kit, have got the PWM connection, which is the normal connection, like the 4-pin, as you get on regular fans. So those can plug directly into your motherboard for CPU fan control, but the actual RGB connections from the fans connect into the hub. So yeah, it's a relatively complex setup, but the complexity gives you a great deal of flexibility, if that makes any sense. Anyway, let's get into see what else we get in the box. For those of you that are wondering, the wires on the table are for the pass-through, so that is the 3-pin 5-volt RGB and also the 4-pin PWM, and that fly lead then plugs into the controller for the pass-through for the motherboard. Also included in the kit are 3 of these fans. These are the 120mm Sahara fans. Again, if you've seen Sahara fans before and you've seen them and you thought, I don't know, they're a little bit on the slightly cheaper side, and they are cheap fans, so that is to be expected. But this is something altogether different. You can tell even just from the back there, you've got the brass parts of the fan. It's a very weighty fan, there's a lot of weight to it, and it just feels a very, very premium product. So if you're maybe thinking of this and thinking, well, I'm not too sure, some of the older Sahara fans weren't particularly great, yeah, this is a completely different setup altogether. Essentially, all of this has been sourced individually from various companies, and Sahara Gaming have basically put it together as one cohesive kit with all high quality components, hence the slightly higher price than usual, but you do get quality included in that. So there's 3 of those fans included. Also, you get your accessories kit, so there's all sorts of in here, like we've seen actually on the screen just now. So you get all the fixing kits, you get a tub of thermal paste, you get the splitter cables for the PWM, so if you've maybe only got limited amount of headers on your motherboard, then it's not a problem because you can just plug in your fans all into this splitter, and then that will go into the hub itself. That's for the RGB, so you've got just one connection, so that's going to save you a ton of wiring going to the hub if you want to. And this one here is the PWM style controller, so you can put 3 fans into there, into one output, and then plug that into your CPU header on your motherboard. So there is going to be a little bit of wiring going on behind the scenes, but actually the motherboard side of things, it's only going to be a couple of connections, so it'd be absolutely fine for those that like that cosmetic look. Next up, we've got our CPU fittings. So this does require the use of a backplate, which is in here. So we've got a specific backplate which is made of metal, and that is suitable for both Intel and AMD setups. There's also a foam gasket on there, so don't worry about it touching the back of your motherboard. Even though this is strong metal, there is a isolation gasket there to prevent any electrical transference between the metal and the motherboard. No problems there. On the mounting side for both Intel and AMD, so we've got two of these. These just slot into the side of the pump, as we'll see a little bit later. So we've got the more square one, which is for Intel systems, and we've got the elongated one, which is for your AMD systems. And last of all, we've got the pump unit and also the radiator. So as you can see, the radiator, 360mm rad, all metal construction, nicely painted, all the fins are nicely spaced out, etc., as you'd expect. Going from the radiator down to the pump, we've got these really nice braided tubes which got a decent amount of flexibility to them, and coming from the pump itself we've got two connections. So we've got the pump fan, or the pump speed control, which is a 3-pin which goes to your motherboard, to the AIO header, and also there is an addressable RGB header. Again, it's that 5-pin one which goes into the hub, which we saw a little bit earlier. Taking a look again at the pump itself, so you've got a really nice big cold plate on there, all made of brass, which is excellent. And the tubes that go in the side, got a nice bit of flexibility on those, so you can move those around pretty easily depending on how you decide to set it up, whether you go for a front mounted in your system or roof mounted or wherever you choose to do it. Now obviously in the PC behind me I had it in the situation where it is in this back part, but again, if you want to, you can just put it into the front of your PC, as I'll be doing on my own personal rig. So that is pretty much it for the parts. There's an absolute ton of them, so let's go through the process of putting it all together and we'll get it installed in the system. So starting with the back plate, this is the AMD side, and as you can see we've already attached our foam gasket on there, and in these top corners this is where we put through the foolproof mounting system. So all you need to do is put your screw in through there, and there is a very tiny little lug which actually stops the screw from spinning round whilst it's in there. So you can just about probably see there is a indentation actually on the screw itself which holds it into place. So you just twist it around, it pops in, and then once you've done that there are plastic tiny washers which go over, and that basically holds it in place. So when you want to line everything up, when you're done, those are what hold it into place. So yeah, pretty simple and straightforward, and just replicate that in all four corners. Just put the bolt through, twist it around a little bit, and it will kind of lock into place, and then you can put your plastic washer over and just do that on all four corners, and that is the back plate ready to go. And when the back plate's finished, it should look something a little bit like this. So 4 screws coming up through, and with those little plastic lugs holding things firmly in place. So when you put this through the back of the motherboard, these will stick out and be easy to actually grip onto and tighten up. So there's the current setup. So we've got our D15 in here, as you can see, and we've got our fans at the front. So we're going to go ahead now and strip all this out to give us a clean working space to start from. Okay, so we've stripped out most of the system, as you can see here, and we've taken off the AMD standard backplate because, well, we won't be needing that. So let's put the Sahara Gaming backplate on. So now what we're going to do is we've got our backplate, so we're going to put that through from the back. You should see those bolts coming through now. And because the little plastic washers actually have kind of indentations into them, it does fit exactly in the little socket on the back there. So next we put these in, but we put them down with the indents facing down. And then that is what is going to hold all of this in place. And you'll feel it kind of lock into place. It's got a little plastic washer there which holds the back plate on. So again, focus on these so you can see them. So there's a little ridge there, and that little ridge goes face down. So we install it with that side facing up, and the little ridge there actually goes into the hole on the motherboard. So I've got 4 more of these to put on. It's ideal, if you can, is to put a little bit of pressure actually on the back whilst you're doing it, just so you don't push the bolts out. And you should feel them all line up and slot in nicely. And there we go. So that is the back plate on. So now we can start mounting some of the other hardware. So next we want to do is to install the rest of the AMD mounting kit, which is all here. So these springs, and also there's some washers, etc. So we've got all these bits here. The locking collar is the next bit to go on. So as you can see, the locking collar, there's like a hollow section on one end, and the other side is threaded. Hopefully you can just about pick that out. So the threaded end goes on the top, and these screw down onto the plastic gasket. And just repeat that 4 more times, well 3 more times rather. Just do them up hand tight to begin with. So when the last one's in position, then what you can do is go around and then just give them a final little cinch. You can use tools if you want to, it isn't necessary really. And you should find then if you try and wiggle the back plate or move the actual studs, they should be totally firm. Okay, so we're slowly getting there. So we've got the radiator installed now, as you can probably see. Put it on the side angle. So we've got the fans actually on the radiator on the inside of the frame on this particular setup. And we've put the screws from the front right the way through, which was particularly traumatic to set up, if I'm completely honest with you. But I did want the fans to be slightly back from the front of the case front, which if I put the case front back on now, you'll probably get an idea why. It's basically because otherwise the fans are kind of right up against this mesh, which can cause turbulence and noises. So yeah, they're a little bit recessed. Also as well, that is much better for light diffusion as well when they're a little bit further back, so it allows the light to spread out a little bit more on the front. But that is pretty much it. So we've on the side, we've got our wiring coming out from the side here. So each one of the fans, like I said before, has got 2 connections coming out of it. So they're ready to be wired up to the hub shortly. I've just been tidying up some of this wiring in the back here just to make a little bit more room. So yeah, we're certainly getting somewhere. I think the next thing to do is probably to install the pump head rather than let it stay dangling here. So we've got our back plate ready. So let's get the pump installed. So what we need to do now to install the pump head is we need to put our AMD bracket on. So this just goes in on the side here. So there is a slot which that feeds down into. So as you can see, and that should lock into place. So then when it's actually in this position, you can see you've got your mounting areas top and bottom. So we're going to put a dab of thermal compound on the CPU, and then we can tighten this up. So we've got a little bit of thermal compound on, so all we need to do now is to put the CPU head into position. So being really straightforward, all we need to do is just bend that round and line up all of our screws. And probably a good idea just to hold it in place briefly. Then you want to use the small metal washers. And then we can use these spring tensioners. So let's get one of those on to start with. Just a couple of screws just to hold it in place. And then we can repeat that on all 4 sides, or all 4 screws. Luckily the spring tension isn't particularly strong on these, so that's really useful. So just so you can see again, that is the bits we're using. Sorry if the camera angle isn't particularly good on this, it's a little bit of a tricky one to do. So now we've got the pipes in position, etc. So now we can go through and just do the usual thing, do a few turns in a kind of crisscross pattern. And just keep going until the screws won't screw any further. Seems a shame that now we're just getting used to AM4. We're going to have AM5 any minute. Hey ho. Right, so that is the pump head attached, and now it's the case of doing all the wiring. So let's get on and do some wiring. Okay, so the wiring is done, and it's a little bit of a rat's nest. We've got a lot going on here, but we've got our fans connected to the fan hub, as you can see here. We've also installed an additional 2 fans, which are the Typhoon 14s, also from Sahara. So those are great because we can just go ahead now and connect up those additional fans. We've got tons and tons of options on the controller, and there's another cable there, so we can just go ahead and stick it in. So we've got the 3 fans on the front, just the RGB coming into this hub, and for the 2 fans on the top, the 214s, we've got the RGB and also the PWM going through this hub. Everything else is connected up, so yeah, it's time for a couple of test fits and make sure that everything works, then we can tidy things up. Okay, so we've finished the installation, and I think I need to go and have a lie down now. I'll be completely honest with you, if you're a newbie at this, you might find the whole setup a little challenging. Again, this is a 360 AIO. They're not always the easiest to fit depending on your case. As you can probably see from the B-roll and the footage you've already seen, trying to get it to fit into a lot of cases can be a little bit tricky, and I did struggle a little bit trying to get that radiator in and get the screws in. The screws could have done with being just a tad longer. That would have made life a lot easier for me in my particular instance. Really, this is designed to be mounted kind of in the top section, or like it is in the one behind me, so you can bolt up from the rear, putting the bolts through the fan and the case and into the rad. Could have done with a little bit longer screws, if I'm completely honest with you, so do bear that in mind. Wiring wise, there was a ton of wiring, and actually I think at the end of it, it was worth it. It gives us tons of flexibility. You can have the lighting off if you want altogether, which you'll probably see from some of the B-roll. So all you get to see is the actual LCD display on that pump, which actually looks great. I really do think it does. I'm not entirely sure where the temperature reading is coming from. It says on the site, and from what we've spoken to with the people over at Sahara Gaming, that they're saying it's a surface temperature readout. I'm pretty confident that the actual reading is the water temperature rather than the surface temperature. So obviously that temperature is more of a guide than anything. But I would say realistically, if you take it as being the water temperature, it's actually a good thing because there isn't a flow meter as such on the actual device itself. So if you notice that your temperature reading is starting to go up really quite exponentially, then it could be down to something like a pump failure, which is going to be something which is unlikely to happen with this. It's a really, really well made pump. It is silent, I can't hear it at all, even though it appears to be spinning at some crazy RPM like 6,500. Totally silent. And actually converting the system over from the D15 with the 5 up here fans which we had in the system previously to going back to this setup with the Typhoon fans is actually considerably quieter. So if you're looking for a quiet life, this definitely is a way to go. I have used the Typhoon 14s in this particular setup, plugged into that hub as we've seen, and they work really well. The RPM doesn't actually read as a digital RPM, but if you've got one of those motherboards like me with the MSI, where you can actually adjust the slider for the fan curves, absolutely fine. And I set it up exactly the same as my previous system, so it kind of curves upward from around about 55 degrees, then up to about 65, and then full blast at 70 degrees. And actually between the two, I was very surprised it beat the D15. Not by a huge amount, but certainly beat it. So we're looking around about 4 or 5 degrees less at the top end. I think this maxed out around about 66, 67 degrees, I think it peaked at, but then kind of leveled down to 66. Whereas with the D15, with pretty much identical settings and the same ambient temperature, in fact, actually it might even be slightly warmer in here now after all this testing, we managed to come in, I think it was around about 3 or 4 degrees, again, you'll see from the B-roll, but the D15, I'm pretty sure, peaked at 71 degrees and kind of stabilised about 70. So yeah, between 3 to 4 degrees shaved off the D15, which I would say is the kind of realistic other option. Now, of course, it would have been far better for me to test this against a whole range of other 360 AIOs, but I don't have that luxury, unfortunately. I will say it did actually perform better than the S36, which is in the PC behind me. Again, by a similar amount, that performs almost identically to the D15 in most tests. So as far as I'm concerned, this has actually performed very well. And actually, it does seem to be actually one of the best products I've actually reviewed from Sahara Gaming so far. So hopefully this is a sign of things to come. Hopefully they just get better and better as time goes on. We are speaking to them directly, working out what products are out there on the market, and they're asking me for feedback. So as far as this one's concerned, yeah, I think this is definitely 2 thumbs up. Works very, very well. The installation is, yeah, it's a lengthy installation if I'm honest, but certainly well worth it. And as you can see from some of the B-roll, the lighting effects when it's all synchronized looks absolutely fantastic. Whether you use it through the included remote control or whether you use it from your motherboard software, the choice is entirely down to you. Either way works fine, and you can toggle between the two. So if you're bored and you want to have a play, just press the motherboard sync button and you can swap between the two. Likewise with the fan control, you can choose fan auto, which goes through the PWM setting on the board, or if you just press the fan plus, fan minus button, then you can take manual control from the remote. So there's loads and loads of flexibility. The RGB effects look absolutely stunning, and I really do like the pump design with that LCD display. The readout looks great, and even George came down when I was doing some testing. He's like, 26 degrees C, that's good. And it looks good, so even if that isn't the real temperature of the CPU, it certainly gives the impression that your CPU is running icy, icy cold. So let me know what you think about this one in the comments section below. I will be putting some affiliated links in the video description below. If there's any discounts which we're trying to work out with Sahara Gaming, then I'll definitely put those in there as well. They may be slightly time limited, but I'll try and put that in the video description as well, so you know when you can get those fantastic deals. But I think even at the retail price at around about £130 for a addressable RGB 360mm AIO with all this lighting capability, the hub, all the stuff, I think it's actually a pretty decent deal. Again, let me know what you think in that comment section below. But in the meantime, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.